South Africa's universities are not training future civil servants for what the country needs. That's the argument by Professor Mashupye Maserumule, the Executive Dean for Faculty of Humanities at the Tshwane University of Technology. Maserumule says blaming state capture for the weakening of state capacity is not enough. He says the university is responsible for producing the human capital needed for building state capacity, must shoulder much of the blame. So how are institutions of training failing to produce civil servants the country needs? Professor Maserumule joins me now to discuss more on this. Professor, we truly appreciate your time today. I wonder whether you believe that significant content has been developed by universities over the past few years to really have what is necessary to train these civil servants, as you say, especially keeping up with the latest technology.
Thank you so much for hosting us. And yes, indeed, those are the arguments that we are making in the article. Indeed, there is more that needs to be done. With the analysis that we did, looking at what different universities offer in South Africa in terms of the content of particularly public administration education, we realize that there is much which is supposed to be there, but is not there. Indeed, the question of 4IR, indeed, the question of interdisciplinary approach, indeed, the question of still having many elements of colonial theorization when coming to the epistemic foundation of the discipline. So essentially, these are the arguments that we are making.
Professor, let's have a look at some more of the worrying trends that you are seeing when it comes to public administration.
The worrying trend that we are seeing, obviously, is many instances where we do have people that are employed in certain positions who have gone through our university systems. But instead of really engaging in the work that they've been employed to do, many a times we see various instances of people outsourcing what they have actually been employed to do. And it even gets worse that the very same private providers that they outsource the work of government to, the quality of what they are bringing back to the state leave much to be desired. You can just look at the report of the Auditor General, particularly as it relates to the quality of financial statements that we get from our municipalities. It's quite worrying. Secondly, is a question of 4IR technologies. I am looking at particularly data analytics for future public service. If we can mainstream that in our curriculum, surely we should produce the type of the public servants that will critically play a developmental role in terms of being able to use a huge chunk of data to make sense of what could possibly be the interest of the public and take decisions. Another important trend is how long does it take for certain decisions to be taken in government, right? And that is largely as a result of the fact that if you look at the curriculum, we do not really have modules that talks largely, for example, about statistical modeling to optimize decision making. And that is why we are making an argument that all these are critically important to be accommodated in a public administration discipline. In other words, we need to have statistics to equip students with the ability, right, to model their decision or to optimize their decision-making processes. But also more importantly, there are various instances of corruption. And that is largely as a result of the fact that when you look at the structure of our education, we tend to put more emphasis on developing the cognitive faculty of our students, the professional competence and technical competence. That is fine. But also, another important fundamental purpose of education relates to the whole question of character formation, which is largely about shaping the ethical disposition of our students. So these are some of the trends that we are observing and what we can do in order to really remedy the situation.
Now, Professor, I want to get to that solution that you are talking about. What is it that we can do? But you've mentioned so many aspects right now. You mentioned character formation. You spoke about theorization. You talked about the importance of gathering statistics, technology, 4IR, curriculum development, and you also mentioned corruption. So these are quite a number of issues that needs to be addressed. So my question to you then is, who exactly will take responsibility for all of that? In your opinion, where do we lay the responsibility for this?
Largely, most of these issues that I raise them within the context of us as universities. I often used to argue that a university provides society with the possibility of recreating itself. In other words, in instances where there are certain things that are going wrong in society, we should begin to ask the question about the origin of some of these things that are going wrong. And your university will obviously become part of what I refer to as the origin of what obviously constitutes what you call the source of talent pipeline. In other words, if there are issues of ethical challenge in society, we need to begin to ask ourselves a question about the type of education and training that these people that are displaying this behavior got. So all what I'm trying to say is that, yes, it is critically important to hold government accountable, but equally so, we need to hold our universities accountable, because this is a source where the human capital of the country originate. This is, like, as I indicated earlier, university, like any other social institution, give us an opportunity as a society to recreate itself, and therefore we need to hold them accountable.
Professor, I want to quickly ask you, in your experience, when people come to the universities to be trained as civil servants, do you find that the majority of them are truly passionate about serving people, because that's ultimately what they would do? Or do you feel like a lot of them are feeling like this might be easy money, this might be a nice, secure profession for me to follow?
That's a very important question that you're asking, because many a time students just go into where they could actually be admitted at the university. And that is something that we should also begin to look into very seriously. We need to have people who have a sense of purpose in what they want to pursue, right? And that also, in many ways, implicate the entirety of the education system in South Africa. It also goes back to the significance of introducing what we'll call civic education from the early days of a child's schooling, so that this person can grow up with this sense that if I want to pursue a career in the public service, I must always know that I should at all times display a sense of public service. But also, more importantly, remember, even those that are actually being trained to work in the private sector, for example, equally, they need to have a sense of love for the country in terms of making sure that whatever that they're doing will actually contribute to the success of the country. So this is basically all what we are actually trying to argue in the paper, to say that education ought to really be structured and configured in a way that it will ultimately also play a critically important role in terms of contributing towards optimizing the public good.
Professor, thank you so much for your time today and sharing your inputs. That was Professor Maserumule, just emphasizing there the importance of developing the curriculum and the training that is going into equipping our civil servants. We really appreciate your time. We now move